Yes, good morning and welcome to the program Know Your Rights. It's our legal program on Lagoon Radio where we educate you on fundamental rights as a citizen of Nigeria. Uh, Remember, it's still Lagoon Radio, your number one online gospel radio in Nigeria and the official radio of the Anglican Diocese of Lagos. And we are transmitting live from the Diocesan Palace right here in Marina, Lagos. Just download our app on Google Play Store and Apple Store. Follow us on our social media platforms on Facebook. Yes, we are live on Facebook, Lagoon Radio Nigeria, and on Instagram, Lagoon Radio NG. Listen to us directly via the link www.lagoonradio.ng, and you can also watch us live on YouTube at Lagoon TV. Yes, it's a beautiful Friday morning, the second day in the month of July 2021. And this morning, we'll be discussing the rights of creatives in the entertainment industry. And we have our guest, Barrister Emmanuel Yada. Barrister, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, hope I got that name very well.
Emmanuel Inyada.
Okay, yeah. Okay, let's get the ball rolling. Give us a sense of what it means by the rights of creative. What is it all about in the entertainment industry?
When we look at the rights of creatives generally in the entertainment industry, we're looking at the rights of creatives with regards to the work they create. We're looking at, let's say, in the music industry, musicians now, the songs they create, songwriters, the written songs in that sense. We're looking at the film industry, variety of rights from the script writers to the producers. Generally, we're looking at copyright in that sense, copyright law, also we're also looking at the rights they transfer or the rights they gain by reason of contracts. In that sense, yeah. So that's
okay. Is this rights absolute?
Well, if we talk of being absolute, certain of them are, but certain of them can be transferred. I believe the rights, when we talk of absolute rights, now we're looking at fundamental human rights. They are not rights with regards to for creatives now, but if we look at rights with regards to copyright, for example, the moment you fulfill the conditions in that sense for creating a work, in that sense, you gain that right absolutely, but that right can be transferred to other parties or in that sense. Yeah, so they are unique to the creative. They are for the creative, but the creative can actually transfer that right. Yeah. So that's
Okay, now looking at this right, how effective is it in our laws or in Nigeria?
Nigeria, we have laws for everything in Nigeria. Thinking about, we have laws for everything. So our laws essentially basically protects this rights, provides for this rights. In the entertainment industry, primarily we are looking at copyright. And yes, we have the Copyright Act, which protects the rights of literary, scientific, artistic work in that sense of creatives. There are laws that protect these rights. And also, I think we can also look at trademark because it's intellectual property generally. We can look at trademark with regards to, let's say, the name of a creative, for example, a stage name, or look at a movie, the title of a movie in that sense. So that's also a right that derives from the work of a creative. Yeah, so yes, there are laws that protect this right. We have the Copyright Act, for example, protecting copyright. We have the Trademark Act, protecting trademarks. We have the Patents and Designs Act, essentially protecting inventions. Yeah, so there are several laws protecting this right.
Okay, now you've mentioned a lot of things. Let's take them one after the other. You mentioned copyright and trademark.
Yes.
And also intellectual property. What's the difference? Are they all under intellectual property, or is there limits to some of them?
Well, intellectual property is that body of rights, or should I say, that protects intellectual work. So once you create something from your mind, that is intellectual property.
Okay.
Yes, and copyright, trademark, patents, designs, industrial designs, There's also geographical indication. All these are types of intellectual property work. They're not the same thing,
Okay.
but they are all intellectual property. Yes, but if we look at the entertainment industry now, primarily, they are rights that actually come under that may feature in entertainment industry, but primarily for creatives, we're looking at copyrights majorly copyrights. But yes, yeah, so that's
Okay. Now, you've mentioned copyright. What about the creative rights? Is there anything? I had something like that sometime. Is there anything like creative rights?
okay. Well, thinking about it, creative rights. Well, if we look at it depends. We could look at it two ways. Creative rights first, with regards to the fact you're a human being and you have the ability to create. So that means you have the right to create. But then if we look at it within the context of intellectual property, now we are looking at the right that creatives get by reason of their intellectual property, their intellectual work. So now we're looking at the rights of creatives in that sense. So, for instance, if you, as an artist, now a music artist, record a song, you have a creative right in that song. So, creative rights are, let's divide it into two. We have economic rights,
Okay.
and we have moral rights. So, essentially, these are rights that allows a creative to be able to exploit the benefits of this work. Economic rights, for instance, essentially means you can make money for it. Then moral rights essentially means that you can protect the abuse of that work in that sense. Yeah. So, and remember I said earlier that you can transfer these rights. So when we are talking of the ability to transfer these rights, now we're looking at economic rights. That means you can license these rights or you can assign. That will call it like you transfer totally, like
Okay.
to other parties. Yeah, so that is
Okay. Now let's measure on this copyright because when we talk about creativity in the industry, it seems that it falls under copyright. What is this copyright law, especially in Nigeria?
okay. Okay. Well, copyright law is the law that protects artistic works, it protects literary works, it protects some, let's say, written works, like that's literary works, artistic works, music in that sense. They all come under copyright. So, if, for example, film in the film industry, we have motion picture and all, they are protected by copyright because what essentially makes copyright is that you create something from your mind and you put it in a fixed form outside, like people can easily see. For example, if you're a poet, for instance, and you write poetry on paper, that's you putting those words in a fixed form. So you have a copyright to that work. If you're a musician, for example, and you record on a record player, you're already putting it in a fixed form. So that means you have a copyright to that particular song. So if you're a composer, for instance, and you put your composition in a fixed form, something people can easily see.
Okay.
Yeah, so that means you have a copyright in that work. Yeah, so that's
Now, how can these rights be protected?
well. That means we have to look at two things now.
Okay.
First, the rights are protected by law. Yeah, that's one, because we have the Copyright Act, and it provides, first, gives creatives the rights to that work. Then also, the rights can be protected by contract. Yeah, so if by law, I think we talked about the Copyright Act a lot. So I think I'll just talk about the contractual aspect now. So for instance, let me make reference to an artist and a record label. So one thing they usually do is that they either through contract now, the record contract now,
Okay.
they license that work to the record label or they assign it to the record label. So essentially, they don't have a right, if it's a license, for that
Okay.
space of time to use that work, depending on the wording of the agreement. But first, they are the first owner of that right. So if you want to protect your right, if you don't want anyone to get it, you can, by contract, let's say you are going into an agreement with a company or something to do something for them, and you don't want to transfer your rights in the work to them, by contract, you don't have to state it in the contract, but if you want to make it clear that they are not getting anything, you have to state in the contract that they are not getting any of your rights in that sense. Also, the rights can be protected by, when we talk of protection, it's wide. Now we're looking at the artist first taking caution to ensure that it is properly protected. Let me state this. You don't have to register copyright for you to have a right in it. Oh. Yes, you don't have to register it, but you can also, there are avenues, there are agencies through which you can actually register these rights in Nigeria and all over the world. In that sense, you can also register this right so as to be able to enforce protection easily. Because someone else can come up with a claim that they created the work first, and you really don't have any proof of it, but they have proof of the fact that maybe they've already registered it somewhere else. So that's another way of looking at protection. Also, protection, we have the law courts. So if you feel your right has been infringed, you can approach the courts, and the courts can, well, essentially enforce, or should I say protect your right, give judgment after listening to your case, and in that sense, and then reach a decision that, okay, that right actually belongs to you. And yeah, so I think those are the avenues by which we can look at, let's say, protecting rights, the rights of creatives generally. We're looking at first the laws, then we're looking at contracts, and we're also looking at, after the law and the contract, approaching the courts in that sense to be able to enforce the contract one and the laws also. Yeah, so that's...
Okay, before we go on this break, I want you to just clarify, because in the course of this program, when I mentioned it to someone, he mentioned something about plagiarism. Is plagiarism related to this creative rights and copyright?
Yes, it is actually. But plagiarism, essentially, we're looking at it at the level of academics now.
Oh.
Yeah, so usually... plagiarism is when someone essentially copies another person's work without referencing the person or without acknowledging the person. Yes, that's a violation of copyright. Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, you're still listening to Know Your Rights, our legal program on Lagoon Radio, and Barrister Emmanuel has been talking, and we are discussing the rights of creatives in the entertainment industry. We'll go on this short break. When we come back, we will look at the role of the judiciary. Remember, they say it's the last hope of the common man, and they interpret the law. Keep listening to us. We'll be right back. Yes, you're still tuned to Lagoon Radio, your number one online gospel radio in Nigeria and the official radio of the Anglican Diocese of Lagos. Of course, we are transmitting live from the Diocesan Palace right here in Marina, Lagos. Is our Know Your Right, our legal program on Lagoon Radio. And today we are talking about the rights of creatives in the entertainment industry. You can download our app on Google Play Store and Apple Store. Follow us on our social media platforms. Yes, like on Facebook, we are live, Lagoon Radio Nigeria, and on Instagram, Lagoon Radio NG. And yes, Barrister Emmanuel is still here. And like I said before, the rights of creatives in the entertainment industry. Now, Barrister, having said all this, let's look at the judiciary. They interpret the law. Let's start from that place first. Now, as an entertainer, do I need a lawyer?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that if you're a creative in the industry, one of the first things, especially when you are getting into a relationship that involves financial commitment with other parties, you need a lawyer from the beginning. In fact, that's one of the mistakes that has caused a lot of pain for creatives in the industry, not getting a lawyer early enough to help them with regards to first advising them on what to do, reviewing their contracts, and helping them structure deals in the industry generally. So yes, you need a lawyer, absolutely.
Okay, now what's the role of the judiciary in these creative rights?
Well, the judiciary, I think, as I said earlier, is the last hope of the common man. So when all is said and done, and there is a conflict, and it appears like mere negotiations and all cannot resolve the conflict, then they approach the courts. And what the courts do is that the courts look at the facts of the case. They look at the issues in that sense, the dispute, and they also look at the laws, and they reach a decision which is final and binding. So that's what the court does. The court essentially, that's the judiciary now, essentially helps to resolve conflict across board, just as it is with regards to normal human relations in that sense. So they help with regards to interpreting the laws, they help with regards to interpreting provisions of contracts, they help with regards to enforcing rights that have been breached in that sense. Because, yes, so that's what the judiciary is for. Because you can't, if there is no judiciary now, we'll live in a lawless, the society will delve into anarchy. So that's the role of the judiciary, to prevent these things, in that sense, anarchy from happening generally. Yeah, and yes.
Okay, now what constitutes infringement on the rights of creatives?
Well, infringement in that sense is, for instance, I'll give examples. You record a song, and someone uses the song without your permission and makes money from it. Even if the person does not make money, that's an infringement on your right, because your permission was not gotten. So it all boils down to getting the permission, the express permission of the creative to be able to use that work. So if you use the work of a creative without getting the owner of the copyright, the owner's permission, then that is an infringement. Also, if you breach a contract, in that sense, for instance, let's say a creative licenses work to you, or their creative work to you, and you breach the terms that makes up that license, that is also an infringement of a right in that sense. So if you also look at, let's say in the film industry, you use even a scene in, let's say in a film, and without the permission of the owners or the producer in that sense, that is also an infringement. So that is what an infringement looks like. I'll also give an instance. It also includes the image and likeness of the creative. Oh. Yes. If you look at, for instance, a Nigerian footballer recently, Ndidi, I think he made a complaint with regards to multi-choice using his image for advertisement without his consent. That was an infringement, and I'm sure they resolved it later on. So that is what an infringement essentially looks like. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm getting to know it better. Now, what is the what are the remedies for these copyright infringements?
Well, if we look at remedies, first, um, well, we have to look at legally now.
Okay.
One remedy is if there is a contract now. Um, we could go to court and sue for one, either an injunction, like let's say bring an application for an injunction. That means to stop the party from using that work. Then second, you sue for damages because they used your work without your permission and you have to get something for it. Then third, you can also, apart from just getting damages and all, you can also get, let's say, money for what they've already used out of it in that sense. Yeah, so you can get that. But I usually advocate out of court settlement because that's ADR. That's the best thing to do. So the parties can decide that one remedy is they don't go to court because that takes time and effort and money. So you can go out of court and you settle the dispute amicably amongst themselves, and that's another remedy in that sense available with regards to when there is an infringement on the right of recreative.
Okay, now let's look at the penalties. You mentioned maybe compensation or something.
Yes.
But are there jail terms for it?
Well, it is not a crime. Yeah, it is not a crime. So it's usually a civil.
Okay. What? It's not a crime.
Yeah.
So that means people can
let's look at it this way. When we look at piracy,
okay,
piracy is a crime.
I was coming to that. Okay.
Yes. So piracy is a crime. So yes, it is theft. So there are jail terms in that sense prescribed by law for that. Yeah. So I don't know the specific right now with regards to how many years in that sense they send them to, but that also depends on the discretion of the judge or the provision of the law. But one thing we should be clear about is that when the law provides for a term for imprisonment, the court cannot go above that term. They can only, by their discretion, give something that is lesser or exactly on that term of imprisonment. So yeah, so that's
But when we talk about out of court settlement and the rest of them, it must be in terms of money. Is there specific amount?
It can be in terms of money. It can be in terms of, for instance, if you're using a person's work and all the person wants you to do is to stop using it.
Okay.
And that could also be an out-of-court settlement. And once you stop using it, then the matter is gone. The person wants money. The person can say, okay, you have to pay for what you've done, or I'm going to sue you to reach an agreement on as to how much the person is to pay for, let's say, damages or for breach in that sense. And they decide on that. It could also be simple, okay, do something else for me in that sense. So anything the parties believe would suit them at that particular point. It could also be an apology, maybe a public apology or something. Say, yeah, that's what it could be, but not always money. But of course, people usually go for money, but not necessarily money in that sense.
Okay, there was this case. Over time, the case will surface, and the Plantation Boys, Two-Face and Face.
Yes.
The African Queen and the rest of them. I don't understand that case. Sometimes you see Face making cases for the. In this case now, is it intellectual theft? Because you mentioned theft.
Well, I think that case is a little because we don't really have all the facts.
Okay.
What we really have are conjectures and opinions and on social media in that sense of because they've not. I don't think anyone has really said, okay, I am guilty or I'm not guilty in that sense. So we really can't say. But if it is the case that that is what happened, that is an infringement of an intellectual property right. That is a typical case of it, actually.
Okay.
And it happens in the industry a lot, where people. There was one that happened recently that I think there was a dispute between Yemi Alade and one other lady, or what's her name now? Shei. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, Shei. Yeah. Yes, and Tiwa Savage. So Shay said something like, there was a particular song that she wrote with someone that Tiwa Savage sang without her permission. So it happens a lot in the industry, and most of these things are actually resolved outside of court. They reach an arrangement, and yes, it is done.
Now, okay, like I mentioned, is there something like intellectual theft? And
Yes, there is. There is. Just like, because intellectual property is it's like, it is what it is. Intellectual property, it's property.
Oh.
It can be stolen.
Oh.
Yeah, so it can be stolen. That's why and it has to be protected, because people can steal it. Yeah, so yes, there is intellectual theft.
Okay, and looking at our society today, where can I say most of us are ignorant of this, and most of the artists coming up, when you say intellectual theft and Sui and the rest of them, some of them cannot afford a lawyer. In that case, what can that person do?
Well, first thing is try as much as you can to get a lawyer.
Okay.
Then the second thing is, I think the person should educate himself or herself. So read, get to learn about these rights. This information are available generally. But I did an article some time ago where I did a breakdown on how creatives can protect their rights generally in the music industry. So, and it applies across industries in any arrangement. So I called it the MOFO quadrant. It's MOFO quadrant. So it's like, if you are going into any arrangement or a contract, the first thing you do is you look at terms. That is M now for money. You look at terms that affect your money. The O is for ownership. You look at terms in that contract or in that arrangement that affects the things you own or the things that are yours in that contract, your ownership rights in that sense. Then the F is like freedom. You look out for terms in that sense that affects your freedom, the things you can do, the things you cannot do, the restrictions, the allowances. And the last one is opportunities, the O. That is, you look at terms that affects your opportunities. So I feel that those are the things that I think creative needs to begin to do. You have to get a lawyer. You have to get a lawyer. But if you cannot afford one, you have to be smart also to get yourself educated, to learn about what you're going into, to learn about the industry, to learn about your rights also. So I think that's it. Basically, that's the only thing they can do. But yes, a lawyer is always necessary, because their terms in contract, they are very complex, and you need a lawyer to in that sense unravel them and explain them to you generally, because you don't have specific knowledge. So yes, so I think, but that's the first thing they can do: educate themselves. Then second, get a lawyer. Even if you educate yourself, still get a lawyer, because lawyers are important. One of the mistakes they make is that they don't bring lawyers in early enough. They don't bring lawyers in early, and that's it's when maybe, let's say, the whole thing has gone sour, and they try to bring a lawyer in to salvage the whole situation and all. Whereas a lawyer would have guided you properly to avoid those loopholes and those disputes that may come in future in that sense. So yes, but if you can't afford a lawyer, educate yourself well enough to be able to negotiate a good deal for yourself. And of course, it depends on the person's need at that particular point in time. So yeah, a lot of factors are involved. But if you can't afford a lawyer, educate yourself.
Now, we have a reaction. Somebody said, please, Barrister, thank you so much. You mentioned something about trademark, but you've not really explained it. So now, putting it side by side, copyright and trademark, what's the difference?
Okay, they're very different. Well, trademark is a right of an individual or a company to use a particular mark for trade. For example, we're looking at logo and we're looking at names. So for instance, bringing it to the entertainment industry, we have, let's say, an entertainment company, or a name of an artist. Let's say a unique name. Which artist has a unique name in Nigeria now? Okay, let's just use Omotola, for example. There was this thing in social media recently that said where they were complaining that Omotola Jolade Kende, she trademarked the name Omotola. Yeah, she has a right to that. It's a name, because we're saying it is generic, that lots of people have the names, but then that is what trademark is, where you essentially
make it personal.
make it personal, protect other people from using it.
Oh.
Yes, so that is what they do. So if for instance you are a music artist and you have a unique name, one smart thing you can do is to trademark that name so that other people cannot use that name. In that sense, it becomes a right that you can protect. First, the name. Okay, let's look at Cynthia Morgan, for instance. When I think she left the record label of P Square, and she was saying something about the fact that her name has been stolen from her by reason of the record contract she signed. That's one thing also. So there's a right, she has a right in that name, but she assigned it to the label and it was taken away from her. I have my own opinion on that, but I won't give it here as to with regards to whether she assigned the name properly or not. But yes, that is what it looks like in the creative industry. Outside, companies trademark their logos, they trademark their company name so that other companies and other people can't trade with that name or with that logo. They have a right to be able to protect it. So that's what trademark essentially means, simply now. Yeah.
Okay, and in the course of this program, you mentioned copyright can be transferred.
Yes.
And looking at it in the other way, can it be a sort of franchise or something?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Let's look at franchising business now.
Yes.
It can be transferred. A popular one globally is the James Bond franchise, where we have
07 and
it's from the 1960s. We'll be having different. In fact, 07 itself is trademarked, so no one else can use it. So yes, it can be. The fact that it can be transferred, it means that it can be exploited. You can license it either exclusively or non-exclusively for a particular period of time. You can assign it permanently to another person forever in perpetuity. So yes, it can be transferred, it can be franchised, it can be exchanged, it can be traded. It can even be traded as securities in that sense, where people get to, let's say, trading, like let's say on the stock market. It's a concept called securitization in that sense. So as far as it's a property, as far as it can move, because it carries value. So the point is about the value in that particular work. As far as it can be moved in that sense. So that's it. It can be transferred, it can be franchised, it can be put in different forms and moved around and yes.
Okay, now let's come back to the judiciary. Now looking at the judiciary as a whole, what is your advice to the upcoming entertainers and the rest of them?
Okay, well, my advice to entertainers, I think my advice will go to entertainers, will go to investors, we go to, because we in Africa now we have a growing entertainment industry. We look at Nigeria as a population of about 204 million people. It simply means that we have a lot of creative people by reason of that size. So entertainers should first, aside from focusing on their craft, they should also understand the business side of their craft. Investors should look at bringing in or investing more in the sector because it is growing by the day and there is a lot of value that is being that's being created. So investors should actually look at investing more. Regulators now, the government, they should look at how they can protect the rights of those people better. The courts now should also look at how they can make it easier for people in the creative industry to resolve their disputes quicker in that sense, to save time and costs. So that would be my advice. The industry is growing. If we look at Nigeria as a whole, I think the industry contributes about about $7 billion to Nigeria's GDP annually. So compared to other countries of the world, it's small, but it basically shows the potential. So creatives should focus on the music side, so the music and the business, or should I say their creative side and also the business side of things, because it's actually business. And yeah, that's my advice basically.
Okay, and on the reaction again, someone said, please, a barrister, you are a legal practitioner. How fast can someone get judgment if his work is being infringed upon?
Well, it depends on the temperament of the judge. That's the first thing. We know the way the country is. Nigeria now specifically, it's sad because first it depends on the judge, it depends on the lawyers, and on the lawyers on both sides, and depends on the willingness of the parties also. So we can't predict how fast you're going to get judgment. But one thing I can say is that we have very smart judges, very good judges who would ensure that justice is done. But there are alternatives also. One thing you can do is try to resolve the conflict outside of court through alternative dispute resolution mechanisms like mediation, arbitration, negotiation, generally. And you can resolve the dispute out of court. And if there's an agreement, you could bring in these alternative dispute resolution clauses into the agreement so that it will be binding on the parties. That this will basically save time, because now we're looking at not going to the court to spend a lot of money. So if you have an agreement, just put in the ADR clause in the agreement, and yes, and that would essentially save time in the event that there's a dispute. But how fast, I can't say. But usually it depends on the case at hand and the temperament of the judge and the temperament of the parties. You can win a case in, let's say, at the Federal High Court now, and the creative decides to go to the Court of Appeal. So that would take like forever to resolve.
Okay, and finally, looking at in Nigeria, where some people affording a lawyer is a problem. Do we still have lawyers that can do this on pro bono?
Well, there are lawyers who by themselves unwillingly would take some of these matters of pro bono. I've done a couple of pro bono work in the creative and entertainment industry, because I looked at it and I saw, okay, just this person doesn't have the money, let me just get it done. And it's part of those things that also give lawyers, in that sense, some kind of fulfillment in their work. Yes, there are lawyers who will do pro bono, but many lawyers will look at there's an arrangement between a lawyer and a client, so it depends on the lawyer also. And yes, there are lawyers who would want to take it pro bono, but not all. Don't expect it. Don't think that's the best. Yeah, so
okay, yes, you just listened to Barrister Emmanuel Yada, and we talked about the rights of creative in the entertainment industry. Barrister, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
We hope to see you when next we'll call on you.
I'm available. Thank you.
Yes, the repeat broadcast of this program will come your way on Tuesday by 5 p.m. Download the app on Google Play Store and Apple Store. Follow us on our social media platforms on Facebook, Lagoon Radio Nigeria, Twitter and Instagram, Lagoon Radio NG. Though Twitter is still on strike for now. And you can listen to us directly via the link www.lagoonradio.ng. That's the size of the package. Do have a lovely day. It's a beautiful Friday. Thank you for listening.